Yeah, woke up, felt like talking some more shit today. In all my videos, I talk shit, but the shit I say be true, so you can't really, be upset with it. I'm talking shit though, and the ones I'm talking to know who I'm talking to. So like I was saying, so about this status quo shit. So when you see people out here engaged in this behavior, you know what's going on. It expresses no desire, like legalization of weed. What you seen was a lot of black community leaders went up in front of the cameras and they argued and vouched for it. And a lot of black politicians vouched for lesser weed charges. But you got to understand, you got registered nurses associated with drug dealers and they selling weed they damn sell. So when you got, because everybody needs a little extra cash here and there. So the registered nurses belong to unions. The unions generally back Democratic Party. A lot of the blacks advocating for the weed laws is Democrats. So the nurses and shit, they not in favor of it because of what's being done to the blacks. They in favor of weed laws being amended and all that other shit and repealed and shit because it affects their way of life. Because if you're a registered nurse and you selling a controlled substance, you're going to lose your license to nurse and your ass could go to jail. So now a problem becomes our problem when our friends and our family members become entangled in this mess, in this trap that was set for the blacks and the other minorities. So now when it becomes our problem, our unions that that back us, we get them to tell the politicians whom they back to go up in front of the cameras and advocate for this shit. So if you get your union to go up in front of the camera and say, I want to abolish life sentences, and tell the politicians to back that agenda, then that's what the fuck they're going to do. But you don't want to abolish it because it's not a direct threat to, it's not an imminent threat to your way of life. And you have to understand these things. And when I understand these things, when I became an adult and I started perceiving things as an adult, I began to understand these things. You know what I'm saying? And this is generally how I talk shit. And it's a fact. Now you go study it and figure it out. And you can do your research on that. That's a fact. Now when people engage in different behaviors and shit like this, they do shit like this and all kind of other shit. This is what generally happens. It's not the fact. That's what I tell people. When I say they playing politics and politician games, it's not to back the blacks. It's simply to uphold the status quo. And what is the status quo? We don't want all our professional. This what the parents say of the nurses and shit. Now I know all y'all ain't come from no rich ass families. Some of y'all came from working families, poor families. Y'all know y'all went to college and all that shit. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, the parents of these people who have friends, they got friends who belong to unions and shit. And they don't want to see their child who they invested all that money in going to college. They don't want to see the motherfuckers get locked up for 10, 15, 20 years. So what they do, they tell their friends, they tell their kids, they may even tell it to their kids in a sly manner, which your parent may even conceal the true intentions of their motives. And this is what I come when I say people shit been passed down from generation to generation and people following trends that was intentionally and initially established to keep the black down, So that's why I say what I say. And I even had a white person tell me, I even had white people tell me, we don't care, a white man, a rich white man. I don't care about my daughter fucking a black man as long as it don't fuck up, what's going on. So this is what's going on. These is facts. This ain't no fabricated shit. It may sound fabricated. And some people may think, well, they said that on purpose, to rile you up and get you to encourage your people and shit and uplift you and all that other shit. But at the end of the day, nah, he said it on purpose because he knew I was going to one day become an age. This was said to me when I was a child, by the way. I was around 10 years old when this was said. So the nigga knew you will one day come of age and begin to perceive things as an adult. you know. And that's just what it is. That's just what it is. But see, life sentences, that don't directly affect them. You know, the Hans versus Louisiana ruling, that don't directly affect them. And to be honest with you, if they was to overturn that Hans, however the fuck you pronounce it, if they was to overturn that ruling, that overturning the ruling would directly affect them, because now when you got a state with a general fund, when those state officers and other state officials commit acts that violate people's civil rights and commit acts against people, what ends up happening is them funds will begin to come out of the state funds. So that shit that was meant for road projects and them funds that was meant for education, schools and shit, and what else they do? Whatever other state programs they got, and the funds that was meant for, you know, college assistance funds, that shit will be going in people's pockets who had their civil rights violated. And we can't have that happening, because we know that our people go commit them civil rights violations. So when that money start going into them people's pockets, the general public is going to get mad, because you got millions of dollars that's intended for road work and other benefits and shit going to people for the actions that's being committed. And then the people will say, you know what? We don't want these people in power no more, because this person in power is doing nothing to stop or prevent this money from leaving our general fund shit and going into these people's pockets. So we will get his ass out of office. See, this is how it directly affects them. So then the unions that back these politicians have no power. And the unions go turn against them politicians, because the union workers' kids is going to bear the burden of the actions of these officials that's committing these violations. And the way it is now, Hans versus Louisiana, you can sue a public official in an individual capacity, but not in an official capacity. And you can't hold the state financially liable for these violations. Now, if you can hold the state financially liable for these violations, you know what happens? People get mad, because the status quo gets upset. You fuck up the status quo. And it starts to directly affect these people, because each year, you know, people get the state get a budget. They get federal funding from the federal government, which goes into a state fund. And when it goes into the state fund, the state has authority to distribute those funds from the federal government. And it's no longer federal money, but it's state money now. So when you start fucking with people's money, man, like that, niggas tend to get mad. They do. They tend to get mad. They tend to hate losing all that fucking money. They tend to hate seeing money that was intended, they hard-working dollars that was intended to do salt the streets in the winter, repair the roads and shit, repair infrastructure within the city. They hard-working money that they work so hard for.